So, welcome to this meeting of the Housing and Asset Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting this evening. I'd like to introduce Councillor Ethan Stafford, who is Vice Chair, and was supported this evening by Lisa Jury from the Democratic Services team. And obviously, we'd also like to extend a warm welcome to all committee members, cabinet members, officers, and any members of the public who are joining us this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping points. There are no planned fire alarms this evening, so if the alarm does sound, please treat it as real and follow the instructions of staff to evacuate the building safely. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and published on the YouTube channel for public access. Members are kindly asked to remember to switch on their mics if they wish to raise a question and speak clearly into the microphone, and that makes sure that everybody online can also hear us. The main purpose of this meeting this evening is to scrutinise the budget proposals in the report that's in front of us. The Local Governments Association workbook refers to the critical friend role of scrutiny committees. The focus of and it says that the focus of scrutiny committee should be on forward thinking, adding value and making positive changes rather than apportioning blame and focusing negatives. In practice and in context of budget scrutiny, this means that we are not scrutinising past year's budgets or apportioning blame for financial situations. We should focus on the budget proposals being put forward and make recommendations or suggest alternatives to the Cabinet's proposals. Scrutiny recommendations will go to the Cabinet before final recommendations are presented to full Council on the 29th of January and 23rd of February 2026. Scrutiny should not be about political point scoring or apportioning blame, and we should work constructively with each other and the Cabinet. So that's the spiel done. We'll move on to item 1 of the agenda. Item 1 is apologies. So Lisa, have we received any apologies?
Councillor Cook and Councillor Hussain, Chair.
Thank you. And have we got any substitute members?
Councillor Drake for Councillor Cook and Councillor Sahota for Councillor Hussain, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. Agenda item number 3, declarations of interests. Do we have any members who would like to declare an interest under the Members' Code of Conduct? Councillor Cowell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, particularly given the nature of tonight's discussions, I just need to remind everybody that I am a tenant of Dudley MBC.
Brilliant, thank you. And do we have any other members who'd like to declare an interest? None? Okay, thank you. Item 4 of the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of November 2025 be confirmed as a correct record and signed. Does the committee agree? Aye. Thank you. That takes us on to item 5 of the agenda, which is the public forum. Can I remind everyone that the purpose of the public forum is to provide an opportunity for members of the public to raise matters of wider community interest that relate either to an item on the agenda or to a topic within the committee's remit. It is not a question and answer session, nor is it an opportunity to raise personal or individual issues. These should be directed through the appropriate channels. Please note that as Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, I have a responsibility to stop any inappropriate comments or to question at any stage if it is inappropriate or not within the remit of this committee. Do any members of the public in attendance wish to speak on an item of the agenda or a topic within the remit? So we'll open that up now to anybody who would. I can see we've got a gentleman there raising his hand. Okay. Now, is that mic set up for the gent there? The one in the corner? Yeah. Yep. So, if the gentleman, if you could just come over, please. There's an empty seat there. There's a microphone, and Councillor Atkins will show you how to work the equipment. That's it. So you just press when you want to speak. The red light will indicate, and then when you finish, you can just tap it off, and that way other people's mics can work instead. I think it's 5 minutes, is it, Lisa? That's usually the norm for people to speak within. Yeah. So if I can ask sir, first of all, just give us your name, and then obviously you've got your 5 minutes to outline anything that you'd like us to hear within the remit of the committee.
Right. Well, I hope that I'm able to go over the issues that have been affected me and my neighbours. My name is Reg Joyce, a leaseholder in a block of 6 flats in Upper Gornal. I'm concerned that the Housing Department officers may be overcharging in their review for the estate assistant stroke caretaker and also the ground maintenance services for the April 2026 invoice. This concern is caused by the lack of transparency in their replies and reinforced by a similar behaviour in 2025 for the cost of the communal exterior lighting at the flats. We each received £200 due to an overcharging over the previous several years because the exterior lighting was calculated as being on for 24 hours for the whole year, each day for the whole year. We don't know whether this was the fault of the Housing Department or the supplier. We didn't find that out. I'm okay, am I?
Yes, yeah,
Carry
got
on.
plenty of time, yeah.
Fine, thank you. Right, we are now concerned about the charges for the estate assistant, who we never saw from one year to the next, that we might be overcharged for his service. In July 2025, I asked for a detailed breakdown of the costs and calculation for the invoice of April 2025. I received a reply from Ms. Steele, who informed me that the charge was assembled from a variety of factors, wages, van, petrol, etc., and that a review was underway for the charge in October 2025. When this was finished, I would be given the breakdown of the costs. I doubted this and made a complaint and a freedom of information request. This failed to arrive at the stipulated time, 20 working days, equivalent to 1 month. And on inquiring to the information governance team for the Freedom of Information Department, I was informed that Ms. Steele had told them that an answer had been given to me. And so their Freedom of Information request had been terminated. I replied to the department that I had not been given the information from Ms. Steele and that I made a second Freedom of Information request. In the meantime, I received a list of individual annual charges for all the leaseholder services for 2024-25, which I'd not asked for. The breakdown for the charges in the April 2025 invoice wasn't there. The Freedom of Information Department replied in the second request that a review was underway and I would obtain the breakdown when the review had been finished. Hardly freedom of information for April 2025. Ms. Steele had said that the estate assistant caretakers would have new responsibilities and they would receive training. To establish whether this was actually happening, I asked for the training dates. I received a reply with the titles of the training courses for all of the council departments for the year. The reply included the statement that the dates of courses for individuals could not be supplied due to personal information protection. This wasn't a request that I'd made. It was a lack of transparency. When I asked Ms. Steele for the dates when the estate assistant had been to our block over the last 6 months, she said there were no records for that, but that a new technological system was being introduced to enable such requests. When I asked in September 2025 when it would start, she did not reply. Again, no transparency, secrecy, and an unwillingness to provide the desired information. Yeah.
I'll just let you know you are coming to the end of your 5 minutes. So if you want to wrap up your point.
Oh, right. Okay. That was very quick. Okay. Right. The last question, the information was that the flooring in our stairwell, the bottom, was going to be relaid. We were given 3 choices on a photocopied sheet. When the floor was laid, we actually chose the majority decision.
So I'll just come in now because you are over the 5 minutes, but obviously you've got some questions that you need answers to and you deserve answers to. So what we'll say is I'll hand over to Kathy just to give you an initial comment, but obviously it's a specific case which she'll need your address, your full details for. So if we can make sure that you gather that information from the gentleman, and then perhaps you'd like to submit those questions in writing.
To whom?
I assume directly to Kathy. She's willing to do that.
No, sorry.
I'm sorry. It will have to be that way because this forum isn't for airing individual cases like that. But I'll just say as well, have you contacted your ward councillors?
Yes.
You have, okay, because it's always worth going to them rather than a committee like this.
Yes, well, unfortunately.
Sorry, sir. You know, we've got a lot of business we've got to get through this evening, but we do want to get your answers to your questions.
Is there a forum for me to carry on with this, these comments about the behaviour of council officials?
There's not a forum as such, and as I say, but for your case, your questions, they do deserve answers, and you've got your own ward councillors who can make representations on your behalf. And Kathy, I'll let her come in now so she can give you an initial remarks, and then obviously we'll move on in case any other members of the public would like to speak. So thank you for your time, and we'll let Kathy respond now.
Right.
Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have Mr. Joyce's address. I know he's raised concerns in the past that have been looked into by the team. So we'll get in touch with you for you to pass those on. I think the only thing I'd say on top of that, because much of it is personal to Mr. Joyce, is just for the committee, in case they're not aware, Mr. Joyce, as he said, is a leaseholder, and leaseholder charges are calculated and dealt with slightly differently to our service charges for tenants. So service charges for tenants are fixed and we review them annually and reconcile them. Leaseholder charges are reconciled in September, and if there's been an overpayment, that's paid back. If there's been an underpayment, so the £200 that's referred to, just for clarity, that's what that's about, because leaseholder charges are variable service charges and they have that reconciliation and under an overpayment piece. So just for clarity, but in terms of the individual issues, we'll pick those up separately. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. And again, sir, thank you for coming along. And Kathy's given a clear commitment here in front of all the committee to get back to you. And as again, you've got your ward councillors. So should you need their support, reach out to them directly. So thank you for coming along. And obviously you're willing to stay for the rest of the meeting. And again, thank you. Okay. All right, sir. So if you'd be able to move back to the public gallery there. Thank you. Okay. I notice we've got another member of the public this evening, but I don't just double checking he doesn't want to speak this evening. No, that's fine. Okay. In that case, that's the public forum item concluded. Now, we have got item 6 on the agenda as the progress tracker and future business, but we've got a lot of extra people in the room this evening who perhaps don't need to be here for that. So we'll swap things around slightly. We'll move straight on to the main item, agenda item 7, and we'll come back to the progress tracker and future business at the end, unless anyone's got any particular reason they don't want that to happen. No? Great. So, okay, we'll move straight into item 7 then. So this is obviously the council budget 26-27 and the medium-term financial strategy 26-27 to 2030-31. Can I invite Cabinet members and the officers to present the budget proposals, and can I ask any members to save questions until the conclusion of each presentation, please? Thank you. Who's going first? Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. This evening's report sets out the budget position for the Housing and Assets Group, covering both general fund activity and the housing revenue account, which, as members will be aware, is a ring-fenced account relating specifically to the council's landlord responsibilities. Members have had the detailed financial information in advance, so Councillor Atkins and my intention tonight is not to repeat that in full, but to briefly frame the position and highlight the context in which these proposals sit. So the HRA financial position and operating context. Overall, the group enters 26-27 in a more stable financial position than in previous years. In particular, the HRA has seen a sustained improvement in reserves since 2022-23, which provides a stronger platform for forward planning and resilience. That said, this is taking place against a backdrop of increasing regulatory and statutory expectations alongside ongoing financial pressures across local government more widely. The group-wide priorities for 26-27, the budget therefore reflects a balance between maintaining compliance, managing demand, and continuing to modernise services in a way that delivers value for money. A key theme running through the proposals is the implementation of a new target operating model for housing and assets during 26-27, and this is about ensuring services are structured to meet future challenges, deliver agreed savings, and remain focused on customers whilst maintaining appropriate governance and assurance. The budget position at period 8, 25-26, at this stage, there are no additional growth items or new savings proposed beyond those already agreed, and the current year position reflects a controlled and prudent approach to financial management. Councillor Atkins and I have further presentations for you, and we welcome Scrutiny's consideration of the report this evening, and we look forward to your questions and observations. So, my part in this is housing and homelessness. And the Housing and Homelessness Service deals with the people-focused side of the Council's housing services, including tenancy and estate management, income collection and delivery of the Council's statutory duties in relation to homelessness and allocations. As well as the high-level key priorities for the whole Housing and Assets Group, Housing and Homelessness Services will be prioritising regulatory compliance and inspection readiness, continuing improvements in how we communicate and engage with our tenants and residents and use their feedback and data to inform service delivery, ongoing delivery of our digital transformation programme, and implementing our new target operating model. Whilst current budgets are balanced and service delivery remains within approved resources, this position should not be interpreted as an absence of longer-term financial or regulatory risk. Decisions taken on income levels in individual years have compounding effects on the housing revenue account and directly influence the Council's ability to meet future statutory and regulatory obligations. In the 25-26 financial year, there is an approved general fund budget for housing and homelessness of £2.316 million and are forecasting an underspend of £774,000. This is due to a combination of savings on staffing costs and increased use of grant funding, resulting in a corresponding reduction in reliance of general fund monies. The forecast underspend reflects short-term operational factors, including staffing profiles and grant utilisation, and it does not remove the structural reliance of the HRA on rental income, nor does it mitigate the long-term impact of compounding income decisions. There is a general fund budget of £2.235 million for 26-27, of which £860,000 is ring-fenced grant and a housing revenue account income budget of £113.2 million. and HRA expenditure budget of £15.446 million. At a group level, the two directors and cabinet members, alongside the group director, have a joint and overarching responsibility for £21.858 million of HRA expenditure and have collective responsibility for interest paid on financing costs and interest received on balances. In the 2025-26 budget setting process, savings were approved across the Housing and Communities Directorate, as it then was, as a result of implementation of the new target operating model for housing services. The rationale and intended outcome of the new target operating model is to embed an efficient, compliant and customer-focused service delivery model. The absence of identified new pressures or growth investment for 26-27 reflects the fact that anticipated regulatory compliance and service delivery demands are already incorporated within the base budget and operating model rather than an absence of emerging risk. The new target operating model is intended not only to improve efficiency and customer focus, but also to ensure the service can absorb increasing regulatory and compliance expectations in a financially sustainable way. Maintaining a strong and predictable income base is therefore critical to the success of this model. These savings are reflected as existing savings in the information circulated to all committee members and comprise of £50,000 general fund savings and £1 million HRA savings in 26-27 and a further £1 million HRA savings in 27-28. No new savings have been identified for 26-27. And similarly, there are no identified additional pressures or required investment in growth in revenue or capital budgets. Essentially, all expenditure required to deliver these services is included within the identified budget. Income services are responsible for collecting rent and service charges from our tenants and leaseholder charges from those who have bought their home in one of our blocks. This income is what makes up the housing revenue account budget, and as such, the less collected, the less the council have to invest in our housing services and our housing stock. To be clear, the income collected from our tenants is ring-fenced for investment back into the services they receive and the homes that they live in. And we have a responsibility to spend that money to improve our services and the safety and the quality of the homes we provide. HRA budget can only be spent on our housing services. They cannot be used to support general fund pressures. Our focus over the last 3 years has quite rightly been on improving the quality of our existing stock, the homes that our tenants live in, but with new and increasing statutory and regulatory duties, there is still more to do. And we need to continue to maximise income into the housing revenue account to ensure we are in a strong financial position to deliver these responsibilities. We are therefore recommending that the council apply the maximum permitted rent increase for 26-27. Applying the maximum permitted rent increase is a key mechanism for protecting the long-term viability of the housing revenue account and avoiding the need for more significant corrective action in future years. The formula for rent increase is set by government at September CPI plus 1%, which for 26-27 means a maximum permitted increase of 4.8%. For Dudley tenants, this means an average rent increase of £4.76. 86.3% of tenants will see a weekly rent increase of between £4 and £5.99, with 2.26% seeing a rent increase of £6 or more a week. Service charges are calculated using actual expenditure and estimates based on known costs, such as utility prices and contractual obligations. The council introduced fixed serve charges in January 25, and costs are reconciled annually to inform the service charge for the following year. As a result of this reconciliation, 72.9% of the 6,855 tenants who pay a service charge will see a reduction in their weekly service charge in 26-27. Of the 27% of tenants who will see an increase in their service charge, the majority, 1,061 out of 1,853, will see an increase of less than £2 a week. A review of the impact of rent and service charges together indicates that 7.01%, 1,445 tenants will be subject to an increase of £6 a week or more across rent and service charges. When taken together, the impact of service charge decreases for some tenants is so significant that it cancels out the rent increase. 692 tenants, 3.36%, will pay less for the rent and service charges in 26-27 than they did in 25-26. It is important to note that around 73% of Dudley tenants receive full or partial benefit towards their housing costs. Whilst we must take into account the financial impact of any increase, we must consider that within the context of the need to maintain a financially viable HRA to deliver the services and improvements that our tenants need, want and deserve, anything but a full rent increase has a significant and long-term implications for this financial viability, even if such a decision is only taken for 1 year. Should a decision be made to increase rent by 4% rather than the maximum permitted increase of 4.8% in 26-27, this decision would result in a loss of £23.3 million to the HRA over the next 30 years, even if a full rent increase was applied in all subsequent years. Decisions not to maximise permitted income, even on a temporary basis, create long-term financial consequences that cannot be fully reversed in later years. Should no rent increase be applied in 26-27, the cumulative loss to the HRA over 30 years would be £203 million, and the ability of the council to meet its statutory and regulatory duties would be significantly compromised. If we are to fulfil our landlord responsibilities to provide safe and compliant homes for our tenants and to build and acquire new homes to meet need in the borough, we must bring this income into the HRA. This means that rather than not increasing rents because of concerns about the impact on a small percentage of our tenants, we should increase our rents to maximise income and focus on the advice and support we can provide to those who may struggle financially. To that end, a transitional support fund of £200,000 was set up in 25-26 to help with the introduction of service charges with very limited take-up. Nevertheless, this fund will remain available in 26-27 alongside other financial support tools for those who need it most. Chair, I'm now going to hand over to Councillor Atkins, who's going to run through his slides. I don't think he will speak as long as I have.
You are quite correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Atkins, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So the Development and Regulation Service deals with the property focus side of the council's housing services, including acquisitions, disposals and new build programmes, building safety and compliance, ongoing maintenance, repairs and investment in housing stock, and the administration and delivery of the disabled facilities grants. The maintenance, repair and investment in our corporate assets sits within Development and Regulation, providing a single corporate landlord function for all council services alongside the facilities management of our corporate buildings. Also within the remit sits our services relating to development control, environmental health, trading standards and private sector housing, licensing and enforcement services associated with antisocial behaviour, statutory nuisance and noise. As well as the high-level key priorities for the whole housing and assets group, Development and Regulation Services will be prioritising regulatory compliance and inspection readiness, reviewing our assets to inform clear long-term investment plans for our domestic corporate assets, managed through a single asset register and supported by robust asset data, strengthening and reinforcing our approach to regulatory services, ensuring we take robust and timely action to deal with concerns, engaging more widely at local level and regional level to attract inward investment into the borough, and implementing our new target operating model. In the 2025-26 financial year, there's an approved general fund budget for development and regulation of 9.799 million. The forecast underspend of 789,000, largely due to staffing and establishment costs offsetting pressures within other areas of the budget. The general fund budget of 8.627 million for 26-27, a reduction of 1.172 million compared to 25-26, 810,000 of which relates to existing savings associated with the corporate estate strategy. For 26-27, Development and Regulation are responsible for a HRA expenditure budget of 58.5 million. Existing savings associated with the implementation of the new target operating model has already been discussed. There is a commitment across the whole group for the two cabinet members, the two directors, to work collaboratively to embed this. Alongside the savings associated with the new target operating model for housing, 810,000 savings were approved in the 25-26 budget setting, associated with the delivery of the corporate estate strategy for the upcoming year. These savings relate to a reduction of the overheads, maintenance and revenue investment associated with the running of our corporate estate, and will be achieved through the building rationalisation and more efficient use of the corporate estate. No new savings have been identified for 26-27, but a growth of 625,000 is required to support service delivery. And this growth focuses on three key areas: further investment into the improvement of our caretaking services in direct response to the feedback from our tenants into the introduction of the service charges, some of which you've heard already from residents tonight. It should be noted, though, that these costs are service chargeable and have been included in the 26-27 service charge calculations, which, as you already heard, are reducing for around 3/4 of our tenants. Creating a dedicated budget to cover spend associated with disrepair claims in relation to our housing stock. This budget is based on an analysis of previous spend, and while services respond proactively to potential disrepair issues, there is more to do to reduce spend associated with solicitors who cash in on cases where works would have been completed over the due course and in any event. The revenue costs associated with capital borrowing for improvements to the Budden Road transit site, and these improvements are electrical, plumbing and groundworks to ensure that we maintain the safety and long-term viability of the site. Capital costs in the sum of 200,000 associated with the required works at Budden Road have also been built into the 26-27 budget. Budget proposals 26-27 for development and regulation take into account the existing services and identified growth However, to be able to deliver the budget presented today, the importance of maximising our income to ensure the ongoing viability of the housing revenue cannot be understated, as you heard from my colleague. Dudley is one of the largest council housing providers in the country, and we take our duties to our tenants very seriously. We have a wealth of robust data gathered over the last 3 years to inform the investment required to meet our statutory duties. But with the new requirement for building safety cases and the proposed revision of the Decent Home Standard, we need to ensure that we continue to have the financial means to continue this positive journey. Similarly, in 26-27, the 26-27 budget presented ensures we have capacity to deliver on the key priorities around regulation and enforcement, providing assurance to our residents that we will take robust and timely action to address breaches in regulation and poor behaviour in our homes and communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. So I think that's it for the presentations then on this item. So we can move to questions. But before we do, just one request from Councillor Atkins, who, as most know, has also got his day job at Russell Hall Hospital just over the road. They've got a situation this evening where I believe he could do with getting off to that sooner rather than later. So if we can just ask to reorder the questions. So if people have got any questions on the development and regulation side and you'd like Councillor Atkins to ask them, if you could ask those first. He's going to hang around for those. He's not shooting off. And then if we can hold back any questions on the housing side for Councillor Bevan, just to follow that. So if that's okay with everyone, we'll open up to questions. First of all, on development and regulation. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. If the service is underspending and no new pressures have been identified, then why are we applying a maximum rent increase and why is it necessary?
Yeah.
Chair, do you want me to come back to that?
We can do, and while others might be thinking of questions for development and regulation, so yeah, you might buy everyone a bit of time to work on the question. So yes, if you can answer that one, please.
I can answer that one.
Yeah.
You're quite right, Councillor Collins, the service is underspending and there are no new pressures identified. I'm also conscious that in my presentation that there was a lot of information there. I will just clarify that the current year underspend does reflect short-term operational factors, staffing profiles, grant utilisation. It doesn't change the reliance on the housing revenue account or rental income. And as we know, decisions on income can compound over time, and even a small reduction in 1 year can have a significant and irreversible impact further down the line. And I don't want us to risk in future the HRA's ability to meet future and statutory and regulatory obligations.
That's actually prompted 2 more questions. I'm really sorry. So as I said, the report states there's no new pressures or investment requirements, but regulation is clearly increasing. So how is that reconciled?
So in answer to your question, Councillor, I think that's what we've tried to build into the budget, and the fact that the regulation requirements and the housing stock condition survey and the regulation that's coming through has allowed us to plan that budget and that planned work, which we need. It's a bit of a double act here. I need the rent and the income from my colleague on my left in order to spend it on the residents and the houses that's in my portfolio. So we've had to increase the rent to build in that plan, if that makes sense.
Okay. Moving to my next question then. Are you actually confident that the budget is sufficient to address damp and mould and to meet building safety expectations?
Yeah, thank you. So we've which I've learned this year, been doing a massive stock condition survey of an incredible detailed level, and as the output from that has enabled us to really plan in detail, what needs to happen and what that's going to cost and what it's going to take. So yeah, I am confident that the officers have got the information that they need, which was lacking before. to enable that. And just as a little follow-up, we're now taking the learning from that and the process from that and applying that to our corporate properties as well, which I know was a question from this committee earlier in the year around how we guarantee and provide ourselves with assurance from that perspective as well. So that theory is being lifted and shifted into our corporate stock.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins.
Thank you for the question and the responses. So now we've got Councillor Cowell and then Councillor Sahota.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a couple of quick ones on the development side, please. Page 55 in the overall document, it's under the savings corporate estate strategy, refers to the selling or leasing of the following buildings, but it doesn't actually tell us which the buildings are. I wondered whether we could possibly have a list at some stage.
Yeah, of course, I can provide you with that list outside of this, no problem, Councillor Cowell.
Okay. And the second one is 2 pages along, page 57, whereas capital projects. It might just be me, but it refers to agency housing assistance, major repairs and agency disabled facilities grants. Just trying to get to the bottom of exactly what that is. Are we talking about the agency costs of the staff to do it or something else? Because I've never seen it quite listed like that. It's normally just facilities grants or whatever. It's that agency thing that's just, I'm just a bit puzzled by it. Just wondered what it refers to, please.
Councillor Cowell, I'm looking over there. I'm thinking they might be thinking what we're thinking. That what page did you say that was on? Because I thought you said page 50.
57 in the overall document. I've made the mistake of looking at the whole thing. It's capital development and regulation, and there's a list of projects.
See, I've got it completely different. 57 on mine is a 1-box slide, and this is the full agenda. Looking to the officers who want to answer. Have you got that page, Councillor Atkins?
No, I don't have the page, but I think I found the line that you're talking about, which is on slide 50, which is the agency housing assistance. Agencies, it's effectively old terminology, so it's the same as it always was, but it's just an old terminology. It's not agency staff, it's the organisation. Slide 50, I think, is the one that your Councillor Cowell's referring to.
So it's just basically the housing assistance major repairs cost as such?
Yes.
Okay, answers your questions. Brilliant. Councillor Sahota.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I just wanted some clarification. Obviously, because I know planning and corporate landlords are all in this directorate now. And obviously, I think I welcome the aspirations that we're looking to do going forward. But it's about the staffing issue in those areas. How's the staffing? Have we got this staffing capacity in sort of planning and corporate landlord? Because I know there's a lot of there were a lot of staff turnover over the last 12 months. So I just need some reassurances that we will have the staffing to help deliver the aspirations going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think you're right. This year has been an interesting one and probably turbulent. I think is probably a fair comment. I think we've discussed and you've heard already around that total operating model and making sure the structure's right, and inside of that is making sure that the systems and processes are as efficient and correct as possible. Off the top of my head, for example, the new planning portal that was upgraded in December, yes, it has a couple of tweaks, but things like that will allow us to make sure that we're getting the responses on time at the right time, by the right level, by the right officer. And I think that's the most important thing, is getting it right first time rather than trying to overload the processes that we've got in place. There have been vacancies, but we are recruiting into them over these last few months. So I am comfortable with how it's progressing, although we're not there yet.
You should put there most for housing, which I'll pick up obviously after this one. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any other members who've got questions on the development and regulation side? Councillor Drake.
Thanks. If there's going to be more money for repairs, is the council going to cease its programme of selling off council houses? I mean, a lot of houses have been sold in recent years because the repair costs were deemed to be too large. If you've got more money for repairs, will you stop that now? Will you have the money to carry out the repairs rather than selling off the homes?
Yeah, so obviously we've got to balance the sort of value for money aspect versus the best value for the council in the element. What I've asked our officers to do is look at how we sell off both property but also other corporate assets. And a good example of that is, like small patches of land that we'll dispose of from the council that we know are going to have, houses built on them. We've got our own planning department. We've got our own team in there. Why aren't we submitting at least a planning in principle proposal to increase the value of that land and get better value to the council, and at the same time trying to increase the housing stock from that side of things as well. So I have, and I think we're on that page now. We've had the the enforcement notice from the regulator as well that we've obviously written to be lifted. That will affect how we develop our housing stock as well, which I think will be a positive measure as well. So I'm hoping that we can start to, increase what we have.
So you will continue selling, that will continue, that policy of selling off council houses that are deemed to be too expensive to repair? That will continue?
It is.
Will it depend on the cost of the repairs?
It's a multitude of factors: cost, value for money, right to buy. All of those factors come into place. We can't sit here and blanketly say, well, no, we're going to have a policy of not doing it. What I'm saying is, what we want to have is a forward-looking strategy that enables us to do it in a sensible way, or
is there a chance of repricing that, sort of, waiting, assessing how much money you've got coming in, perhaps, keeping some of those properties if there is more money?
I think it's.
Are you thinking about that at the moment?
As I said, I'm thinking of doing it on a case-by-case basis that matches the strategy going forward, and that will be this year and years going forward.
Okay.
Thank you. We've had a few hands go up there, so I hope I've got the right order. I think it was Councillor Sahota, Councillor Ali, and then Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Just had a bit of a light bulb moment, Chair. Obviously, I know we've got a new director of planning, which I think obviously Michael's here, and I think it's about grasping the nettle of how, because I've seen other councils work with housing associations and etc. building houses. Are we looking other best practice to sort of how we can sort of work in partnership with other small developers, housing associations, to actually bring more social housing stock to residents in Dudley? Because I think we need to be looking at quite a few sort of creative sort of strategies going forward. Is that something that's been looked into? And then the other question I think is key is, yes, the reason we've sold a lot of our council housing is because they've been poorly managed in terms of housing management. I think Kathy accepts that. And what interventions are we putting in place to ensure that we better manage our housing stock, so though they don't then go into rack and ruin and then we end up selling them? So I think that's also a critical key. And the third question, sorry, is what targets have we got to reduce voids? Because if we compare our voids to other councils, that is a big KPI we need to sort out. Thank you, Chair.
So we've got the leader of the council who wants to come in on there. Thank you. Oh, your microphone's not working, Councillor Harley, because we've got a few red lights on. So, Councillor Soto, if you can knock yours off. Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to ask a question later on about the budget, Chair, but just coming on that point, I think members and the public have got to realise a lot of our housing stock is approaching 80 years of age, there will come a point where, and the reason why we do sell off some properties, because we need that revenue to invest in new build. And whether that's brand new build or properties that developers build and want to give to us as part of a land deal or etc. But it's important because those properties are approaching 80 years of age. And at some point, we'll have to replace probably all of them, probably not in our time as members, but at some point, all of them will have to be replaced. And that's worth bearing in mind.
Thanks, Councillor Harley. Councillor Atkins, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I think you might have to remind me of a couple of one of them, but the question around the new builds, which we do already, and as Councillor Harley acknowledged, but yeah, obviously we try and take evidence from everywhere, but we do already do that. Yes. Yeah. The voids, there's already a KPI dashboard around the void, so we do monitor that. And I forgot your third one. So
if you can just pop your mic back on, sorry.
I think those are the three, when the voids, working with housing associations, best practice, and the third, and the other one was Kathy, like through Yvonne's leadership, we better housing manage our stock, because I've seen, we've all got them in our wards where the gardens get overgrown, it's not being maintained, and then we end up kicking them out, and then they're lost leaders. You know, had those been managed more effectively, they would, one, we would gain twice, remain in stock, then we wouldn't have to then sell them at a loss. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just take that on board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You've got all answers to all three questions. Yep, you're happy. Brilliant. If you can turn your mic off, Councillor Sahota, and then Councillor Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As a colleague of mine used to say, he wasn't planning to ask a question. I wasn't planning to ask a question, but I will on the back of the question about selling council houses. Can you share with us how much money is sat in the accounts for new builds? Because if I remember correctly, last year or the year before, there was a significant sum of money sat for building new homes, and there is also timescales, I think, attached to those. If it isn't spent within a certain period, then that money gets taken back, I think, to obviously to government. So if you can shed some light on that, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, open that up for Councillor Atkins or even Kathy, if either of you want to reply.
Yeah, thank you. I might allow Kathy to take the more technical aspect of it, but there's £10 million in the budget next year for that.
So that's in the budget. I know Councillor Ali said kind of in the bank, in the account, if you like. So does that change the answer, Kathy? Does that change the figure?
No, if I may, Chair. It doesn't change the figure. It's just some additional information, really. So we've put £10 million in the capital programme for new development and acquisitions. But alongside that, we have in our reserves, ring-fenced reserves, our right to buy receipts, which off the top of my head is just over 20 million, but I can confirm that figure. We do closely monitor right to buy receipts, because if you don't spend them within a certain period of time, not only do you have to give the money back to government, but you get charged a kind of percentage of that money as well. So we reported back to CMT not so long ago around assurance that that right to buy money is also spent. And one of the recent changes by the government is around how much of right to buy receipts can be kept by local authorities, and also the opportunity to use that alongside other funding, which wasn't there before. You couldn't mix, for example, Homes England grant and right to buy receipts in the past, but you can now. So it gives us much greater flexibility going forward in the next financial year around development and acquisition.
So I've been reminded this isn't technically in this report. So very valid questions and good to hear the answers there. And obviously future committees, we can certainly delve into this further. Have you got any other questions, Councillor Ali, about this specific report? No. Councillor Reid.
My concern is there any money put aside for the town centre properties that the council own, the commercial properties that you deal with? Because we've had some standing for over 5 years that haven't been rented out.
Yeah, so I think that's covered under the void question that we asked earlier. So we monitor those through key performance indicators and have forming that is forming part of what I mentioned around the corporate strategy around all of the properties that the council owns. So we monitor the void status, and then we're building the strategy and the stock condition of every single council owned property that's not housing.
Well, if it's for over, you're talking over 2-3 years, the commercial properties that Dudley Council own that has not been rented out, not made available, well, nice enough for people to come and rent them. What is that? That's a massive rent loss, and also a failure to Dudley Town Centre, where you've got properties. I can name one that's 5 years old on Stone Street that nobody's rented. You imagine that rent loss on one property. How many more is there in that Pacific area that we need to entice business people to come in and rent those properties? And I know that whether it's true or not, that some of them who are trying to rent them are saying that when it's offered to them, they have to do Pacific repairs. That was told to me by someone who wanted to rent a property, but they wasn't prepared to pay to do certain repairs
Councillor,
that
if
they
you've got a
felt.
question, please,
Yep.
turn that into a question, because I don't think there was a question there as such.
Will you pay? Will you do the repairs before people actually rent these properties that have been standing for more than 5 years?
Yeah, so not technically a budget question, I think, but that on this budget. But I think the answer to the question is, as I said, we've only just recently started doing a complete stock condition survey of our corporate estates, and that will fall into that. I know this committee has asked in the past for data around that, which we've acknowledged has been poor in the past. That might equate to why some of these have been empty and why the condition has not been good enough to rent. That will all form part of that strategy. So while not budget related, I think we have articulated that there is a plan to do that going forward.
Okay, with councillors, is it on that point there?
To be fair to there, because that I think must have been before with corporate landlord. So it's something that you've inherited.
Yeah.
So that, and again, is a failing by the previous regen director not to sort that out. But obviously, hopefully, it'll be sorted now. Thank you. Just trying to backfill.
No, that's useful. Thank you. I've got another one, then anyone else can obviously come in as well. I'll start off just asking a very broad question, and then I don't know if specifics will follow. On page 65 of the full agenda, that's the version I'm looking at, slide about the budget summary, development regulation. There's a box there that's budget build, and it says pay award increase of 397,000. But then it's the second bar, which is a reduction almost as much as the savings, 743,000 pensions triennial assessment. I'm going to ask a broad one. It might be unfair. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, honestly, I can't personally, because every area is going to have that. My understanding is, but we've got the finance officer here who'll be able to give some detail around it.
Brilliant, Lisa.
Hi. So yes, we have a pension scheme effectively for all staff, and to maintain that pension scheme and to fund the liabilities, we make a contribution into the pension fund. Every 3 years, there has to be a review of pension fund and contribution rates, and it happens for all authorities and all pension funds, and it happens at the same time. So it's not just a Dudley issue. Following on from that, we're recommended to reduce our pension contributions because we don't need to be paying at the level that we currently are in order to maintain the liabilities within the scheme. So that is positive news, because we're able to take that money out of the budget, but at the same time we know that the pension fund and the contributions and the liabilities are covered within the pension fund.
Thank you. Just from that then, so because I think it is significant here, because the figure is almost equal to the savings separate to that. So I think it is clearly a significant figure for this budget. So just thinking then, so the review that takes place and all local authorities have to do that. But the fact about contributions, so consultation with staff and employees, is that something that's been part of this process?
No, and the reason for that is that it's a responsibility on us to make sure that we're paying enough into the pension fund to cover the liabilities. So this does not affect employer contribution rates. They remain unchanged. This is about an employee contribution. This is about employer contributions. And there's no impact in terms of the benefits that staff would receive through the pension fund. So this is just a funding position for existing benefits through the scheme.
Okay, that's useful. No, it's came in handy then by the look of it. So that's good. Thank you. Have we got any other questions on development and regulation before we move on to back to housing? No? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Hope your shift goes well and hospital, everything goes well, as well as it can. So yeah, any further questions then on more on the housing side? Councillor Reid?
Yes, since the service charge was implemented last year in 2025, have you had an increase in rent and service charge arrears, the collection of it? So has there been an increase in arrears since last year than the previous year?
Councillor Harley, I think, wants to come back first, and then. Oh, he's got a question, right? Okay. So Councillor Bevan, and noted for Councillor Harley a question.
Councillor Reid, it is a really short answer. No.
That's really good news.
It is good news, and it was difficult for some residents to take it on board. But you need to remember that the service charge forms part of the rent, and a lot of our residents receive benefit, and that charge is fully covered. It's incorporated in that, and we do work hard with the people that contact us to ensure.
Unfortunately, I'm the one who has the ones who can't afford it though. So I was just asking, overall, was there an increase? Whether it's the same as the previous year, that's fine. Obviously, you're going to get arrears, people not paid. So I'm just dealing with those who meet that criteria.
It's a fair point. It was raised in this committee previously about what effects we thought it may have on the rent arrears figure. And yes, it potentially that was there, but fortunately we haven't seen that, and we didn't see a huge demand either for assistance from the transitional fund. It is something that we do address when we speak to residents about their arrears, because we are conscious that the rent now includes the service charge.
The transitional fund is hard for certain people who I deal with to get into contact with. So I think we're picking up those people who have got no iPads, no phones, no access to telephones or language and stuff like that. So we've got that small percentage, but I fully understand, and that's good news to me that it's not an increase.
It's a valuable job that you do. Please continue to refer them on to us, and we do want to work with them, and we're not here to make people's lives difficult.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Got a couple of comments and a few questions, if that's okay. Well, somebody's not very happy out there, I think. Firstly, it's a general comment, really. It would have been helpful, if I'm honest, if we could have had this perhaps a few days earlier. It has been quite a lot to sort of go through and get on top of, and some of us, of course, have had the cabinet and other things as well. So it's just a general comment in future, if we could perhaps have it a little bit earlier, please. In terms of the sickness absence on the workforce slide on page 8, again, some other information that would have been helpful, I think, is it tends to repeat the breakdown across the council, but it would have been good to see a breakdown graph specifically within housing. I think that would be helpful as a comparator.
Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I'm just come in. Unfortunately, I can't get the slides in front of me, but Kathy's just shown me there. The workforce summary slide is then followed by the housing and assets group one with that information on.
But for the sickness slide, I think the numbers are identical. So it's not actually, so yes, there is data on both slides, but it can't be unless they match bang on, which I'm sure they don't.
It's in that bottom corner. It's just a repeat graph. I think
Yeah.
it just would be useful if it had been, if we'd seen the data.
As I say, I haven't got it on my screen, but we'll take that on board.
Yeah. Balvinda?
Chair, through you, if that's an error in terms of our reporting, we'll reissue the slides with the correct figures on.
Thank you.
I'm just looking at Kathy's screen there. The figures are different. 8% and 10%.
So just for clarity, what I think Councillor Cowell's referring to is you've got the workforce summary slide, councillor overview, council overview. Next slide is houses and assets group overview. Bottom right of both slides, you've got a box called top 10 reasons for sickness. On mine, and is it the same on the vice chairs? Yep. So I don't know if there's a few versions of the slides going around here.
It's because I don't.
Can you? Oh.
Chair, that is an error. We will correct that. It's just that
Okay.
one box in the bottom corner that's the big yellow stripes that talks about top 10 reasons for sickness.
Yeah.
That's just been transposed. It's just error. We produce so many of those, so we'll get it updated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And members, if any other errors are noted like that, please make sure that's communicated so that revised slides can go out as well. Okay. Councillor Carr, any more questions?
Yeah, looking at page 20 of the main of the presentation, where it talks about the rent breakdown and how many people will be affected. I noticed that actually the largest proportion will be paying an increase in rent and service charges of between £4 and £5.99 per week, which is £25.96 a month, and many will be paying even more. If you look at it, there's 15 tenants paying between an extra £13 and £17 a week, which is £73 monthly. So I get the thing about the averages going down in some cases, but it can be a little bit misleading. And I just want to draw attention to these assumptions around people being on benefits. We do hear that quite a lot, and I accept a lot of people are on benefits. But I think the assumption to an extent is just that, do we actually know exactly how many are on benefits and not? I think there's a little bit too much focus on the resilience of the HRA itself, which is very critical, and I absolutely get that. But I don't think perhaps we pay as much attention as to the tenant's ability to pay. And we need to think about those that are on low income. Now, I know that it's been alluded to tonight around the transitional support fund, but I have raised this before. I looked again today. If you go to the rent section and you look for those that are in difficulty, again, I can't find access to it, I can't see it. And I think that translates possibly into what you're saying about not so many people picking it up. Is it that they don't need it or they can't find it? I'm just a little bit worried that it's not as transparent. So perhaps you might like to.
Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. You're quite right. We haven't made any assumptions. The majority of our tenants are in receipt of benefits. You and I have spoken in other forums about the take-up on the transitional fund, and I'll take on board if you're telling me that it is difficult for people to find the information, then that's something that we absolutely need to look at. But I want to assure the committee chair that when people do contact us, either through Councillor Reid's excellent organisation or contact us direct, then that is one of the options that we will go through with them. But you're quite right, if it's difficult for people to find that information on the website, then we do need to address that as a priority.
Thank you. Just a couple more, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just
Sure.
rent convergence is referenced on page 23 of the pack. I'm just trying to clarify, really. It looks like there's a recommendation to approve basically whatever the government allows us to do. I'm not sure whether I'm quite reading that right, but I would be very worried about us accepting the proposal to just put it on without it coming back before scrutiny and before council at the point when we know the exact figures and when we've got an actual budget of what we're going to do with it. So I'm not sure quite whether I'm reading it right, but I would certainly be unhappy about approving it, if you like, in advance. So I'd just like some clarification around that, please.
Councillor Bevan.
However you are reading it, you're quite right to bring it up. Chair, at the beginning of the meeting, you said that this was non-political and various things, but I must point out we haven't had an update from government on the rent convergence, and I have absolutely no plans to implement that this year. So whatever recommendation does come out, that won't be implemented this year.
Thank you. That's reassuring. Just one final point you'll probably be glad to know, Chair and Committee, and it actually relates to the supplementary document, which was the Cabinet report from yesterday, and where it refers to the new grants around homelessness, rough sleeping and domestic abuse. And there's also another one, isn't there? The Crisis Resilience Fund, which brings together the Household Support Fund and discretionary housing payments. I just wondered whether you'd had any chance to think at this stage about how that might break down in terms of, if you like, the previous streams of recipients. Because the grant itself is lumped together. I just wondered how we were going to deal with that in effect.
Who'd like to answer that one? Kathy.
Apologies, it's probably easier because it spans a little bit wider than Councillor Bevan's area. So, and Lisa may want to come in afterwards as well, but clearly those grants are pretty much grants that we've had for several years. We have to wait every year to find out what the grant level will be, but there's no indication that they'll stop. So they are used on a number of occasions to commission services that are commissioned under a contract. So when we're looking at future spend, we have to take into account actually what we're already committed to under our contractual arrangements with, for example, organisations in the voluntary sector. So it's not a case of getting a grant allocation and kind of sitting there and saying, how should we spend it this year? Because we've already got a number of contractual obligations around those. But Lisa may want to answer from a more financial perspective.
Yeah, so you'll note from the Cabinet report yesterday that what we've said very clearly in the report, that any grant funding that comes in for specific service delivery and to support specific services is just being automatically passported through to those services. So we're not top slicing. It is a case of wherever comes in will be passported through. I just wanted to really just pick up on the Crisis Resilience Fund, because there is new criteria that's come with that funding. It's only just arrived, and we're needing to work our way through that in terms of what we can and how we can spend that money. The plan is, so in the first instance, that money is being built into the budget, so it's there. The second stage is for us to look at the new grant criteria and how we frame our scheme in the context of the new criteria. So it's the intention that we will do some work through scrutiny with members in terms of what that scheme looks like going forward. It is tight in terms of timelines. We've been asking for the criteria and the information before the budget settlement, but unfortunately it hasn't been made available. And as I said, we've only just literally got it through.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cole?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Harley. Sorry to call you just as you're taking a sip of your drink.
Okay, thanks, Chair. It's reference to antisocial behaviour. Cabinet members will know that we're proposing a very new, tough antisocial behaviour policy. The officer team prepared it. It's gone to informal cabinet. Cabinet should be coming to cabinet shortly. It'll be one of the toughest ASB policies on any council in England, which is good. I think that will please all 72 members, and I think the well-behaved residents of Dudley. However, we did ask for additional resource because you can't beef up your ASB policy and not put more money into it. I can't see any evidence of that in here. We did say when we put forward the policy, we would need the ASB surveillance van, drones to deal with off-road bikes, because we know officers and police can't chase. Drones will be able to trace them back to where the little beggars are coming from. and sees them. So it's the ASB van, it's the drones, it's additional officers, it's the mobile cameras. And of course, I think the largest cost to this new policy will be taking that gamble, and it is a gamble when we take people before a judge to say, you've misbehaved, we're not prepared to house you anymore, out. That's the biggest risk of all, and probably the most expensive part of this. So I can't see any reference in any of the slides to that, and I think it's a key part that I think all members would support to really beef up our ASB. So can I have assurances that we have put additional resource in the budget?
Councillor Bevan?
Absolutely. This is neighbourhood antisocial behaviour, which will really benefit tenancy-related antisocial behaviour. So I'm really keen that that we get this through. I believe that these issues are identified in the budget already, but I'll pass you on to Kathy to just give you a little bit more detail in that.
Yeah, there's just no detail on the slides, which is.
Yeah, so just by way of assurance really for members, absolutely, the new policy will be coming through to Cabinet, and the arrangements have been made within the service area and within the budgets to be able to deliver that. So some of it is around investment in more technology, but we already have some of the technology there in terms of cameras and that kind of thing. We previously used noise monitoring equipment, which is costly, needs calibrating and all this, that and the other. We've got a new app now that tenants can use directly to record and share videos, noise things. So some of the changes that will help us in terms of our approach to antisocial behaviour won't cost a huge amount, but so, you know, there are some other bits that will. So within the target operating model that you've seen described in the budget slides, that takes into account those changes in the antisocial behaviour team to beef them up, to link in the out of hours services with our street wardens, that we've got a more robust team there. So you're right, it probably should have been referenced, but it is included within all the budget sectors.
We're looking at the drones, the surveillance van, and obviously resource for mobile cameras, and also obviously core costs.
Yeah, indeed. And mobile cameras, as I say, we've already got. We just need to look at how we better utilise them. So
72 members and the well-behaved members of the public, very happy. Thank you.
Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, just to add to that, Chair, whilst this sits with enforcement, as I said before I handed over to Kathy, this will be a massive boon for us with housing related antisocial behaviour, because when we refer cases further on for enforcement, then to have this range of tools that we can access as well would just be fantastic.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up to that, because as Councillor Harley said, that the funding will be essential to make this stuff happen. So we're looking at figures here. So are we saying that these figures need updating because there'll be additional spend that's not reflected within this? Or you're saying it's accounted for, but it's just not badged as such? So if we to look at the figures we've got, where should we be looking in there to identify that funding that Councillor Harley has mentioned?
So it's within, and I could go through the slides if you want me to find the slide that it's on, but essentially the ASB services that we're talking about are general fund services, and they will sit going forward in the development and regulation side in a wider enforcement team. So alongside our trading standards, environmental health, noise nuisance, and all those kind of things. So we've got a really robust approach to enforcement across the piece. So it's in development and regulation predominantly, although the antisocial behaviour that's dealt with in our homes is housing revenue account funded. So there is that split between general fund and housing revenue account, but the actual activity, that enforcement activity, is encompassed in the development and regulation general fund.
So that figure will be higher than last year's figure?
For the team?
Well, in order to have this extra resource, the figure will naturally need to be higher than it was previously.
So what you won't see at the high level that the budget slides are at is an increase in general fund budget there, because it's bringing together a number of general fund services, and some there'll be an increase and a decrease and a move around. And as I said, we've included the changes to the staffing in the wider target operating model. So whilst again, when we're implementing that model, some staffing costs will go down, it also allows for us to increase resource where we've identified that we need to. So again, it's kind of a bit more implicit in the higher level figures.
Okay, we've got a few more questions, and I just think I'm thinking of proposing we make a recommendation just to make sure that that is clearly earmarked, so as it doesn't get spent and pulled into other areas, because this is clearly a focus that we want to go down as a council. It's a commitment we're making to our residents and our tenants. So I think we'll work on a recommendation at the end. But we've got Councillor Sahota and then Councillor Reid.
Okay, I just wanted to pick a couple of things. Obviously, going back to the workforce staff data, Kathy, obviously it's a concern. Firstly, I think the aspirations are good. I think the direction of travel seems to be positive in terms of the report. I think the only thing that could undermine that is actually the trend in the workforce for housing and assets, where there's been a 25% jump in the long-term, I haven't got my glasses today, long-term sick and long-term illness. It's gone up to sort of 10% in the last year. That is higher than the overall council average. Obviously, I'm hoping there's some sort of mitigation that's been planned for that. Is it just because obviously structural changes of people feeling uncertain that people could be off sick or turning over, or is there some underlying issues why that's been caused? And I presume that figure obviously you got a more of a service area data which we can then pinpoint where the issues are. So that's one issue, because I think that's going to be a key concern. If we're going to be, if we're going to be trying to deliver all these services, that could be underpinned by the issues of staffs being understaffed and morale, etc. So that's one issue. The other issue, obviously, I welcome the investment in the ASB. Obviously, me and Patrick don't normally agree together, but I certainly feel this is positive for everybody. I think yourself, for the last few years, I've raised concerns with yourself that the ASB in Dudley needs to be more beefed up. That's positive. But I think the one area that we do need to strengthen, Catherine, is ASB by our own tenants, particularly where we make the tenancy agreements a bit more robust. And I think at the moment we tend to be a bit sort of, we can't do this. And I think if we need to do this to deliver for our communities, not just the tenants. That's the only points I wanted to make. Thank you, Chair.
Just coming on that point, Parmagid, and you'll be pleased to know, we can't beef up the ASB policy without reviewing the tenancy agreement. That's happening as well. I think that is in the slide.
Yeah.
So,
you need that.
So that is happening.
Thank you.
You'll be pleased to know.
Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah, whilst I think it's amazing with the new ASBC policy coming in, ASB policy, my concerns are around the families who can't control some of their children, or they're disabled, or they've got health issues, and you always have with the off-road bike kids who are down Penstead and wherever. Sometimes it's not the actual tenant who's on the name of the tenancy who's causing the issue, because you've probably all come across it as in your role that you have the vulnerable mother or the vulnerable father who can't control the teenager, and they're going to maybe penalise with their tenancy. How are we going to solve that? And I fully support the ASB policy.
Reid, making very valid points, but it's not budget related. It's more about the policy itself. So I think we will move.
But it will come into costing though, won't it? Because
if you've got a question that directly relates to the budget and ties in, feel free. But I think we don't want to be answering.
Have you allowed costing for that? For when you do the new policy with the tenants who are coming through, have you allowed costing for the vulnerable?
Councillor Harley.
I mean, we haven't agreed the policy, but part of that policy will be that, and there will be parents who need help because their kids are just unmanageable. And we've got a case at the moment, which I won't go into, which is completely different, but the same aspect where the parents are having a horrendous time because of a particular child. But there are also parents who don't give a damn what their children are doing. And in that policy, if you are the tenant and you don't give a damn what your child is up to, then we'll take the measures against you because you are ultimately responsible for the actions of your child. So yes, we have to be protective against those who cannot control the children and do their absolute damnedest to do so. But those that don't give a damn, then we will clamp down on you.
I fully agree.
Brilliant. Councillor Bevan, I think the point's been answered unless you've got anything specifically on the budget and the funding allocated to it. If you have, please answer. If not, we'll move on.
I just want to say that it's really difficult, isn't it, to set a budget and to identify an amount for maybes. We will deal with what comes through the door, and if it needs additional services, then we will signpost that. But as Councillor Harley said, if you cause a disturbance in your tenancy, you will feel the wrath of the housing department and of the legal system. Cost will not come into it.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any? Councillor Drake?
Yeah, this might seem like a stupid question, but what exactly is social rent convergence? I've not come across it before. And formula rent, you know, give us more detail on that, where it's coming from. Thanks.
That's a big question.
No, he said it was a stupid question, Chair. It's
that's what happens when you're standing in for someone, isn't it? Because this is something that we have discussed several times on this committee. But yeah, as a substitute member, understandable question. Yeah. So if you could give a summarised version, please, Councillor Bevan.
Councillor Drake, it is not a stupid question. It is an excellent question. When I spoke about it before, I was thinking, does everybody know what rent convergence is? Basically, and I'm sure Kathy will step in if I get this wrong, it's just about ensuring that we are charging the correct rent. And in some instances, some of our properties, we won't be charging enough. And what the government are saying to us is that we can add a figure on, and that has been suggested of either £1 or £2 a week. London boroughs are suggesting that that should be as much as £3 a week until the rent is at the rent formula rent. Kathy?
No, it's pretty much as Councillor Bevan's described, but essentially there's a formula that's set again at national level for how you calculate the rent on your properties. And for all sorts of reasons, a number of social landlords are charging below that formula rent. And so at the moment, social landlords are very worried, council housing providers across the piece, around the costs of compliance going forward. We've got the new building safety regulator, we've got decent homes changes coming up, and all sorts of additional costs that actually a lot of social housing providers are saying, we can't afford these. What are you going to do to help us? So what the proposal is to say, well, if you're not currently charging your formula rent, then we're going to give you the opportunity to increase your rent over and above the set rent allowance that you know, the set formula for rent increases of 3.8% CPI plus 1. What they're saying is, rather than limited, because let me take a step back, our rent increases every year are set again by a national formula that says CPI plus 1%. What they're saying is, you're saying as a social landlord, you don't have enough money to meet all these challenges that are coming. So over and above the CPI plus 1%, we're going to allow you for a period of time to increase your rents by £1, £2 or £3 a week over and above that until you get to formula rent. So not all of our properties are below formula rent, and not all of them will take 12 months at £1 or £2 a week to get to. But what the government is saying is, if you need more money to invest in the compliance responsibilities, you need to get your rents up to the formula that we told you could charge first.
Councillor Bevan does want to come back. If we can keep it brief so we can move on, but yeah, please come back if you've got anything to add.
I have. You can see why, with the lack of guidance and the lack of clarity from government, we've got no intention of pushing this through this year. It's not the kind of decision that we will make without due diligence and putting it through the appropriate scrutiny, Housing Assurance Board and every other opportunity that we get to look at this, because it's an increase, isn't it? And that's just not something that we're just going to nod through. That's something that we're going to examine carefully.
Thank you. Councillor Drake?
Yeah, this might be something that might terrify some residents if they think it's going to reach the levels of private rent. I know in my area, Cowsley, private rent is absolutely out of control. I mean, you're paying £1,000, £1,200 for a house semi-detached. It used to be 400, 500. It would be that if it was a council house. So what is it going to go up to, the value of a private rent or some other property, some other neighbouring area, region? I mean, have you established at the start what it's going to go up to?
I think it's worth saying, I think we will give an opportunity for an answer, but obviously I think we've had a clear commitment that it won't be happening this financial year anyway. So actually we are scrutinising this budget. But yeah, if you do want to come back with just some assurance very briefly to wrap this question up, please.
It won't match the private rents that you're talking about.
Okay, there we go. Next scrutiny, when this is on the agenda, very valid questions, and yeah, we can delve in. If you've got another question.
Yeah, I've just got another comment, just on the, if it's going up £4.76 a week. I've been to a lot of people here, that might not see much, but to people who rent houses from the council, that's a lot. You know, if you take that across a month, that's probably every bit of spare money they've got. They're really on the breadline. Caroline will tell you, some people really don't have anything left. I mean, you know, they have not enough money to pay the bills as it is. So some of these people, and this is working families, not just people on benefits. And in Cowsley, other areas, people are working, they don't have any money left. They go to work all the hours they can, they still don't have enough money left. So this might seem to us a small matter of only £4.76 a week. But some of these people, it's a lot of money. And it's yet again, working families are getting attacked again and again. Every side, price increases, rent increases, everything's going up for them. So this, you know, it's got to be taken seriously. It's a big matter for these people.
Councillor Bevan, again, if we can keep it brief, please.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Drake. What might seem a small amount to us can have a huge knock-on effect, especially if that tenant rent includes a service charge. I am aware of that, but part of the rent increase is about maintaining safe and compliant homes for people that need them, and that in itself is a key protection for the vulnerable residents, that we're able to continue providing a housing service for the people that need it, and it's got a long-term viability. It's not a decision that we just take easily, but in order to keep providing housing for people that need it, we have to put the rent up. But I do fully acknowledge what you're saying. For us, it might not seem a lot. I think Councillor Cowell worked out how much it cost monthly. Was it you, Councillor Cowell, that did that? And that changes the figures. And, you know, what, £4.76 a week, it doesn't sound a lot, but everything else is going up. And we are really aware of that. But our priority has to be maintaining a safe service so that people that are vulnerable and do rely on us for their housing can continue to access it.
I think we'll wrap that one up there. And it's just worth saying, I think, that many taxes, as we know, and costs on the public are going up, but it is worth recognising that in this budget, because the work of officers to bring down service charges, it is a rare occasion where there is actually reduction in a good percentage of the charges that people will be paying in service charge. So, you know, I think that's the spirit that we're talking about, that where we can, the council can make efforts to reduce costs for our tenants, then we certainly want to be doing as much as we can. So, yeah, thank you to Councillor Drake. If we haven't got any more questions, we'll move on to wrap up with the recommendations. There are obviously a couple in the report. As I mentioned earlier, I think we do need to submit a recommendation around the funding for the antisocial behaviour policy. I'm just going to move something in a moment that I think is going to go to all the process that will be for all the committees when it comes to recommendations, and that will be that following consultation with the chair and the vice chair, are members happy that we'd be authorised to finalise any recommendations for submission to the cabinet? So rather than get the wording perfect tonight, are we all happy that myself as chair and the vice chair can finalise that wording? that okay? I will just run past you some vague wording I've written here for the ASB one. So recommendation that the council and the cabinet look to clearly earmark funding to ensure that the council's new policy and approach to ASB is properly resourced to give the best chance of a successful impact. Something along those lines. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? No? Okay. So I think I technically need a seconder for that. So is it, yeah. Councillor Johnson? Yeah. Beat you to it, unfortunately. So yeah, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Are all agreed? Aye, brilliant. So that is carried. So that means we can move on to item 8 of the agenda. So we have compliance with the regulator of social housing and the regulatory standards. You actually at the end, can't we? Yeah. I think there's no reason we can't, is there? Do it at the very end. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think we'll stick to doing the action track right at the end. It makes sense. But obviously anybody who doesn't need to be here for this item, please feel free to make your way home. Balvinda, yeah, absolutely fine. Okay, so yeah, this one, back to you, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report is presented to the committee to give an update in terms of our current position around Dudley's regulatory notice and the inspection regime that we undergo as a social landlord from the regulator of social housing. And what it does is build on the initial self-assessments that we've presented to this committee over the course of the last year or so. It's an evolving process. We are working, on a daily and weekly basis, really, to look at ensuring that we maintain the regulatory compliance that we've got and looking at where we can enhance actually what we do in terms of good practice, further developments, further improvements. So what this report does, I don't intend to go through the full report itself unless you'd like me to do so, but what it does is set out, what we've done around that. And I think probably for me, the crucial document is the Appendix A, which gives that overview against each of the regulatory standards as to our self-assessment, having done them, as to whether we think we're compliant or not, and what else we think we can do to improve. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's a gap there or a non-compliant piece, but we want to be continuously improving the service. So what you'll see in that appendix is an assessment against each element of each of the regulatory standards, why we think we are fully compliant, substantially compliant, partially compliant, and what else we need to do. And the intention of this document is to provide some assurance, really, and an opportunity for discussion with Scrutiny Committee, but some assurance around our understanding of the current position, so that, hopefully you'll see the document say, yes, we can see that you've identified there are things to do, and that you've got some assurance that those are being built into an action plan. In fact, the teams are working on them as we speak. So if I could really refer the committee to the appendix and take any questions that you might like to assure yourselves and to scrutinise where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions? Can we open up, please? Councillor Cowell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think you'd be surprised if I didn't have something to say on this one. Just a few comments, really, and a question. Just around 1A in the appendix. I know that it talks about continuing efforts to access remaining properties, but I do think that needs to be stepped up. We talk about this so often, and yet we still aren't anywhere near that 100%, which was the original target. So I just think we need to redouble our efforts on that one. 1D, the repairs and maintenance. It talks in the improvement actions, it talks about improvement communication of planned works. I think that is really critical, and I think it's something that at the moment we do very poorly. And I'll give you an example. I mean, well, as we know, I live in a block of flats. I'm not going to say where it is, but the last time there was a Windows programme, the gentleman that lived below me, he's moved out now, but I know that he was very upset when they came to do the windows, because he said nobody had given him the opportunity. He got a problem with the windows. Now, they just basically went round and knocked doors. That's fine if you're in, but it doesn't work so well if you're not. And if you take that example, then potentially that means those windows are still not right, and that's our asset, which is not being maintained. So I think better communications around something like that and the need for access is something we really need to focus on, because in the end, that postage stamp or that phone call or whatever is a cost. But the cost of not doing it potentially, because we don't get in, because nobody knows it's happening, not only leads to disappointment, but potentially a degradation of our assets. So I think we need to focus on that. 2B and diversity needs. And this was alluded to an extent earlier on by Councillor Reid. But I think the other thing to say further to what was mentioned earlier is we do need to stop assuming that everybody has got access to or can use IT, and also that they can read and understand English. We need to make sure that our comms are much better in that respect. And 2C, probably one you know I'm going to moan about. I always say that our engagement with tenants just isn't up to standard, and I'd like to see much more emphasis on that going forward. And one question just arising from all of this is under 1E. It talks about including tenant groups in the review of adaptations. I just wondered how you would do that, and whether it will be the people that are affected by those kind of adaptations, or whether it will be your general sort of existing groups, please.
I think we've got 2 indications to speak. I'll go with Councillor Bevan and then Cathy.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. They're good points. Your comments about the stock survey where we've had no access. The conversation that I've had is that we must have had contact with that person. It may not have been about the stock condition service, and this is about us just looking at how we work as one council in terms of people must access more than one service. Just because you're a council tenant doesn't mean that you put everything through the housing department, and this is an issue that I have raised, and you're right to bring it up here. The issue with the window visit and the guy in the flat below you, yeah, it's great if you're right, if we go out and we knock on doors and somebody's not in, perhaps they don't get spoken to. I would really like to think that we are much better at that now. Having been a housing officer myself many years ago, then yeah, I can see that practice happening. You didn't say how long ago this was, but I would be devastated if that's the approach that we were taking. Tenant participation, again, as a long in the tooth housing officer from many years ago, engaging residents can be really, really difficult. We bring them along. Historically, we've brought residents along, Chair, to meetings such as this, and we've expected them to follow a committee process that perhaps we're all used to, and it must seem at times awfully dry. And I think we really have to look at how we engage, who we engage, and what we engage them with. And it's important that there are some outcomes from that. These are valid points. They're points that I do bring up, and I do want to see an improvement in that. But I am really aware of how difficult it is. It is difficult. You're asking people to give up their time, to give up their evening. We've all come here this evening and done this, but not everybody is willing to do it. So we have to look at what we do, how we do, what we get from it, but more importantly, what residents get from it. But they're all valid points, Councillor Cowell. Thank you for those. Cathy, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
It was just in relation to the specific question around consultation around the adaptations policy. So again, we would be looking to consult with people who, with tenants and I'm going to say residents as well, who receive adaptations, because it's really important that the review of that policy is informed by the people who are receiving the service. The reason I referenced residents as well is because whilst that refers to a specific policy, we provide adaptations in owner-occupied homes and private tenant homes as well. So we do need to get a view widely across the piece, because what we want to sense check is that we're not operating in a different way in, you know, for example, an owner occupied home to a tenanted home, and that whatever works best, whatever is the identified good practice, that we're applying that across the piece. But absolutely, we wouldn't be looking necessarily to involve in an in-depth consultation somebody who's never received an adaptation, not waiting for an adaptation, etc. So it will be a focused consultation in that sense.
Councillor Cowell, any follow-ups?
Just one very brief comment. I think in some respects that the communication with tenants and their involvement are linked, because I think that's where it will start. If we could talk more to tenants about what's happening around them, you'll find that they'll be more involved and perhaps want to jump on board and be involved in discussions then around what's going on. Maybe one will follow the other, and perhaps we don't do enough work on that.
You're quite right. A suggestion that I've been given is that when you ring an organisation, I don't know about an order that you've placed, and they ask you, is there anything else I can help you with today? Is it okay if I send you a text on how our service was? And you get a text and there's 3 questions and it's either yes or no, or you give it a score between 1 and 5. I really think that's something that we could look at. And one of the questions that we could ask when tenants, residents ring up with a repair or a query about their allocation is, would you be interested in getting involved? And I think we have a massive scope to do that. I think it's a good suggestion, and I do think it's one that we follow up, because we're speaking to our residents all day, every day. And I think it's just about asking the right questions and saying, are you interested in getting involved? What is equally important is that when they say, yes, they're interested in getting involved, is that we've got something for them to get involved in. But I think there's a massive scope for us to improve and to do better, and to use technology like other organisations would use it.
Thanks, Councillor Bevan. Is that okay, Councillor Cowell? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll ask if anyone else has got any questions in a moment, but just one for me, because it was on one of the items Councillor Cowell touched on. So 2B in the appendix, we've got some actions there, including one that says to improve translation services and communication accessibility. There's not an action, however, on signposting to services where people can actually learn English rather than require a service just to help them translate from their existing language to English, which can be an expensive service for the council to provide. But also, I don't think it helps people integrate into their community. So I'd actually like to see an action here around signposting people to services, support with learning English, so as then they can obviously correspond with the council in the ways we're talking about in this report, but also it helps them talk with their neighbours and integrate with people around them rather than live in separate communities because of language barriers. So I think we should be tapping into the voluntary and third sector there, because we know there's a lot of services available and they won't necessarily come at a cost to the council or a huge cost. So that's just a comment, and I'll ask it as a question as well. Has that been taken into account, and is that part of the plan? If not, can we make sure?
No, and it's a very valid point. So, much of this is focused on how our tenants access our services. And so, we will always need translation services for things like making sure that people know what they're signing if they're signing a tenancy agreement. But I think it's a very fair point that signposting in terms of our wider support of our tenants is something we can build in.
Great. Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I think the suggestion that I've just relayed to committee with Kathy's comments there, I think that's something that we can look at as a whole council. What I'm suggesting doesn't just have to be aimed at people that contact us about repairs or the transfer, but anybody that rings up. We need to make sure that when we're taking that call or answering that email, that we're fully signposting and that we're asking questions and we're ascertaining, is there anything else we can help with? Yeah. So I think it goes much further than just housing.
Absolutely, cross-departmental working, and again, it transfers to other areas of a person's life as well. So we're doing a good for tenants by encouraging that and supporting them with it. So thank you. Have we got any other questions from members? Councillor Drake?
Yeah, I have to query some of these surveys because some of them seem to be quite shallow. You'd expect them to be thorough, but I've been to properties that windows are at an obvious angle, and yet they've been assessed as fine, there's no problem. Whereas any person with eyes can see there is a problem. There's other properties that have got no plaster on the bedroom walls, and yet they've been passed as okay. So how good are these surveys by Savills? How much faith can we have in those? If even I can see the problems, and I'm not qualified in assessing properties.
What you need to do, Councillor Drake, is let us know the details. You can pass those either to me and I will raise them, or you can pass them directly to Kathy and she will investigate. If what you say is correct, then yeah, we have to look at that and see what's happened and what's gone wrong. So don't hold on to that information. Pass it on.
Kathy, I can see you want to respond.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think it's just worth reminding us all, because it's been some time since we brought them in actually, that a stock condition survey, it's a bit like a decent home standard really. The decent home standard, not meeting the decent home standard, does not necessarily mean that somebody's home is in a very poor condition that you wouldn't expect somebody to live in. So the stock condition surveys are similar. They assess against, for example, the different things in the decent home standard, the different elements of the health and housing and health safety rating system, HHSRS. So the stock condition surveys, and this is the same across any landlord, are focused on some elements which may not pick up things like repairs or plaster dropping off unless it's to do with the fabric of the building. And so we would absolutely encourage anything that you feel hasn't been picked up to be reported. Likewise, when the stock condition surveyors were going into homes, tenants were saying, oh, well, I've got an issue with a repair for this, for that, for the other. That's not their job. They're there to do that survey on the building against those criteria, but they've reported that back in so that somebody else could pick it up. So we would encourage the same, really. So.
Yeah, just a quick question about the complaints boards. Who sits on them? Are there any residents that sit on them, any actual tenants, so they can give their perspective? There's mention of some kind of complaints thing in the report. Trying to get greater participation or representation, something like that. I was thinking it'd be good to get tenants on that.
Whereabouts in the report is that?
Isn't this in the scoping thing? Can't remember exactly where I saw it. Something about complaints board, complaints brought by the tenants.
Is it in scope?
Right, 2F.
There's a brief mention, a couple of lines. Somewhere, I can get back to look at
Yeah.
2F, yeah.
I think you're referring to the third bullet point, which is an action about establishing a formal residence panel for complaints oversight. Is it that bit? So that's an action, so something that we will take forward. Thank you.
Yeah, would you be willing to get tenants on that? Is that tenant based or is it going to be filled with officers?
No, it's down as an action to form a resident panel. And again, it will say resident because we will get complaints about our antisocial behaviour services, our homelessness services, our leasehold services. So it will be representative of the people we deliver services to.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, so if there are no further questions or comments, I move that the recommendations in the report are noted. Is that seconded? Brilliant. All agreed? Okay. Thank you. So there are no questions. Actually, no, I'm going to ask the question first. Are there any questions under the procedural rule 11.4?
There's none, Chair. Just remember we need to do the action.
Yep. So yeah, and then we'll move back to the original item number 6, which is the action tracker and the progress tracker of future business. So the report captures actions from the meeting held on the 13th of November and highlights progress. Do members have any comments on this? No? Oh, Councillor Carroll, yeah.
Yeah, just one. They all seem to be listed as open. There's no actual response or date does that mean they're all pending? Are we going to get those responses?
Kathy?
Yes, and I came here fully prepared to give an apology to the committee at the start of the meeting for the ones that were allocated to myself. So in terms of the information around rogue landlords, I did have that from the operational group. But what it's highlighted for me is that we have a very manual system for recording that information. So it had to be manually interrogated by the team. So one of the actions that I've identified for the next financial year is to get some better reporting on that. And whilst I've had all the information in terms of us, in terms of the group picking up and managing 21 cases in 2025, they had more referred into them, but for various reasons, they accepted and dealt with 21. A number of those have been closed, and what I've not had back yet, because they are literally going through reams of notes, is the outcomes. So what I really wanted to do when I share that information with you is the outcomes of those case closures, because I could tell you they talked about 21 cases and dealt with them and closed all but 7 of them, but it doesn't actually tell you anything. So there's an apology there from me that information I don't think is robust enough yet to circulate, but it will be. I think in terms of the open actions that were allocated to Ian Wallace, who's the Associate Director for Acquisitions, Compliance and Maintenance, I think it was made clear in Ian's report that the information, particularly around our corporate assets, was new. They had just come into this group, and that the initial report was a preliminary report that said, this is what we know at this time. This is what we're working through in terms of the information that we've got, the surveys that we're doing, etc. And I will bring that back in a series of reports. So again, he's working behind the scenes to dig into that information that's requested, and we'll send it across as they get that robust answer. But with it being new to the service, he's having to do the kind of work that he described in that report that he was presented. So that will come through to you, probably not all at once, but as he focuses on each area. And unfortunately, in the last few weeks, he's been a little bit focused on the winter pressures bit as well. So that will come through to you. But my apologies, you've not had all of it yet, that we haven't closed any of them off.
On that, Kathy, I was going to raise this, that obviously we asked at agenda setting for the actions, the tracker to be phrased slightly differently with completion date, well, with dates for completion. So not just does it say open, but there's also no target dates there. And obviously we did have that meeting with Ian where, we were all quite understanding that it was new at the time, but I think having those target dates will help focus minds. So if the next time we see this, it can have some dates in there that you're willing to hold the team to, and then we can obviously monitor progress against that. So if we can have that, please. Thank you. Okay, so there are no further agenda items, so I declare this meeting closed. Thank you for attending and your contributions this evening. Have a safe journey home. Thank you.